Welcome to Corporate Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Sam Bracamontes. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Charles AKA Credit Chef. Charles, thank you very much for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Today, we're going to be talking about something very important in the role of an industry professional and in everyone's career as a whole that I think that, sometimes we don't necessarily pay enough attention to,
Absolutely.
But it's very, very important. So, Charles, would you please introduce yourself, talk about your journey and how you ended up in your current role?
Absolutely. So, Charles got the name the Credit Chef because as a little kid, I loved watching cooking channels.
Nice.
As most of the kids were out playing and are at the house watching cartoons, I was watching Cooking Channel. Paula Deen, Emerald Lagasse,
Nice.
Meanside, all of them all the time. So I wanted to cook. So as I grew older, my hands started hurting as I was cooking. So I was like, man, I can't really cook that much anymore. So I was like, I got to find something else to do. And a few years before that, a friend of mine, his dad, was into credit, into business, and he was like, kind of almost like that rich dad, poor dad.
Okay.
He taught me a lot about credit
nice.
and all that, but I never took it serious. So at that point, I was like, you know what? I got to reach back into the tool belt, find out something else to do.
Okay.
Start the people I was cooking for. I said, hey, I can also fix your credit. Start fixing their credit and start getting more and more clients, more than I was cooking for.
Wow.
And I made about 4 or 5 times the amount of money.
Wow.
And then a friend came up to me and was like, hey, man, you should call yourself the Credit Chef. And I was like, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So got
That's
the domain,
awesome.
Got it trademarked. We're about 2,500 clients in. We just got a quick text from a client yesterday. They bought their dream house.
Wow.
So it's more gratifying because, as I was making the food, people were like, their taste palates were being heightened. They're like, oh my God, this is great.
Yeah.
But now I'm helping them out in other aspects of their life,
Right.
By helping them lower their interest rates on their cars, getting houses that they typically wouldn't have been able to get,
Right.
Even, renting an apartment. Some people can't even rent an apartment.
Simple as that,
Simple as that. We take for granted because, my credit was pretty stellar, but I took for granted I was just able to sign and go.
Right.
But, most people aren't able to do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny because I didn't know that about you on the chef side, but this podcast is gears towards the hospitality industry.
Absolutely.
So I mean, everything comes full circle.
Yeah.
I mean, we're more alike than we're not.
Yes, sir.
Right. So let's break it down. Right. Like, so what is credit, and what are the purposes of the different agencies?
So there's 3 different agencies, the major ones. You have Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And they're each totally separate. They have their own separate entity. They're not the same. So, a lot of questions we ask, when you're disputing items, why did it come off one bureau and not the other?
Right?
And they're 3 totally different companies, 3 totally different CEOs. They have their own rules and regulations. So with them, each one of them has their own things that they ways they like to do things.
Okay.
So it's very difficult in this day and age, especially after Equifax had that data breach. They are really pretty much lasering in on making sure everything is 1,000% correct.
Okay.
They're not just throwing stuff to the side and say, okay, delete this, delete that. So, with the credit aspect, a lot of people are having a harder time.
Right. Fixing it. Right.
Because they're now, with the data, the way that it's being transmitted now, back in the day, we write on a piece of paper and you send it off. So now all these other, these agencies are trying to get the clients to dispute online, which is terrible. Because when you dispute online, you don't get to dispute the actual inaccuracy of the account. They only give you a few options. This account's not mine.
Gotcha.
I was never late. And that's not really what you want to say. So basically, that's painting you to a corner. Because after you do that so many times, now that dispute becomes frivolous because you're basically disputing the same thing over and over again. And so you're not able to get that account removed. But Equifax, Experian, TransUnion know this. That's why they give you the option to dispute online, which is not what you want to do. You want to seek out either a professional or research yourself and find out what's negative or bad about what's on your credit report and find out how to dispute it the correct way.
So as you continue to dispute, your credibility sort of lowers, essentially,
Absolutely.
right? Like that's the
Because it's almost like, hey, we told you what the problem was, but most of us, even myself included, we didn't know how to read that initial letter that came back.
right.
So, a lot of times they'll say your account has been updated. Okay, then what does that mean? So you have to basically take the old report, compare it to the new report, and see what they did. They might have changed the date that it was updated.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't really attest to what you asked them to do.
Wow.
So then it comes another dispute round has to be done. Say, I didn't ask you to do that. This is what I asked you to do. You need to be held liable. But a lot of people get those cookie cutter letters. And they'll say, okay, well, round 2 says to send it again. And then you keep doing that and you get it marked frivolous. And then once that happens, they're not going to remove the account unless you get somebody in there that really knows how to make them accountable.
Yeah. Would you say that that's a bit of like naiveness from us as a society as a whole, right?
Absolutely.
Especially with the way we're communicating, the way we're fixing things nowadays. Like I think that, you just go online, simple 3 clicks and it's taken care of. It's not necessarily, and again, knowing the importance of credit, it's not something that we want to take lightly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So with that being said, what are the biggest misconceptions of credit? Is there something that we feel that builds our credit that actually doesn't? Or is there something that we tend to believe that hurts our credit that actually doesn't?
Well, some things that don't build your credit is utilities. They check your credit. Right. So actually turning on utilities like your power, your water, your gas, your cell phone bill, those actually don't help your credit at all. Now, Experian has give you the option to add that to your credit report to boost it up. Yeah. But we haven't really found out if a lot of companies can actually see that those utilities are posting or just you can see it on your credit report.
Interesting.
So those things are basically not on your credit report. So insurance is not there. So a lot of times people are paying these things on time religiously. Right. But the things that actually are on their credit report, they are not paying on time. And they just get caught up in the whirlwind with it, whether it's either rolling lates or they call and communicate, say, I can't pay it to this day. And they missed a phone call. They don't have the funds. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them don't know the tips or tricks that they can use to basically eliminate having that 30-day mark on their credit. Because that's ultimately what's hurt the credit the most is that first initial 30-day late.
Wow.
Because that basically looks like, whether they're either unemployed or they no longer have the means or the money to pay their bills. So when that happens, that 30-day late hits your credit report, lowers your score, and now to other banks, it looks like you're not able to pay any bills.
Wow.
So that's why you get denied.
So the biggest thing that somebody should avoid is that first 30-day remark. Whether it's, what would you suggest to reaching out to the company itself and asking for some sort of...
So what I tell my clients, reach back to the things that don't report on your credit, your insurance, your power bill.
Interesting.
So talk to them and say, hey, is there any way I can get an extension?
Right.
And I can pay this over a course of time. And then you take that money that you would have paid to necessarily keep your lights on and pay the credit card. So that way you don't have a 30-day late. Because you can always, put that power bill into an installment for 4 or 5 months and then let them, and they'll keep paying because they know that you need lights. They're not going to turn the lights off.
I love that you just share that because that is so true, right? I think that not necessarily something I thought about, but I think that you're right. Like utilities, light, all these things, you're like, no, like I need to pay because if not, it gets shut off and I need these things to live. But to your point, and going back to the root of why we're doing all of this is, I think it's that sort of budget management within your own personal life, right? Whether you're managing a business, as a supplier, whatever it is. But I think taking the time to know your priorities, where you could extend that sort of payment and then continue again. Because the reason why I wanted to bring you on board is because myself starting as a bartender, when I was younger, I didn't necessarily, understand the importance of credit. But as I got into a more corporate role, I started realizing that all of the companies that I've ever worked for on a corporate level, they always look through my credit report. Yeah. Right. So, fun fact, I think one of the first ones, maybe it was a distributor level. I think, the expense sort of card that they gave us, the company card, it was much lower than my peers because the liability that they could take on me was more. So again, it's simple things that we need. These are tools for us to manage the business and can be affected by credit.
Yep. And another trick I teach my clients is basically when you have a credit card, say you have a credit card of the $300 limit. It's better to pay on that card $300 before the statement closing date. So let's say the statement closes on the 25th, and then it reports on like the 27th, 28th to the credit bureau. If you pay $300 by the 25th, it's going to report to the credit bureaus that you have a zero balance. But now you have that $300 accessible to you. You can take that credit card and pay your lights, your insurance, and get your gas. But so many people will pay the gas and all that bill because they don't want to get it turned off. Right. They leave the credit card and then miss a $26 payment.
Right.
Get a late payment. Credit score drops 100 points. And they're wondering, like, what did I do wrong?
Right. That is insane.
You basically just have to redistribute and have to think about it a little bit different.
Yeah.
And just pay the credit card, let it report to the credit bureau, use that money that's available to you now and pay off the bills that you have via your credit card. And then basically you've killed all 6 birds with one stone.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. That's amazing. The typical debt ratio that one should keep, I've heard is under 25%. Typically, is that true, or what is?
So they say 30%. But one kind of, to me, it's a rule of thumb. The credit chef rule we say is every 1% is a point. It's not necessarily true. So just keep in mind, if you do have it at 30%, you potentially lost about 30 points of your credit score.
Okay.
So that's why when you max out a credit card to 100%, you lose about 100 points.
Wow. It
could be more, give or take, but that's a good rule of thumb that somebody can remember. And it's easy, but a lot of critics out there will say, "Oh, that's not true. It's 97.5 points." But an average consumer can't go in fractions.
Right.
Just to say it's 1 and 1. If it happens that way, it happens. If it's more, it's more. If it's less, it's less. But that way, at least the client knows. So I know my clients come in and say, "Oh, I know I'm at 70%. I lost 70 points. I'll pay that off later." But it's something in their mind that's synonymous now that they know how to do their own calculations.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that idea. What about the biggest credit hacks?
The biggest credit hacks is basically more or less trying to keep your balances low, because that's basically your amount owed is 30% of your credit report. So if you keep those balances low, 30% or less, you get a good amount of points.
Okay.
Also, not making sure you don't have any late payments, none at all. So always talk to if you're getting ready to pay late on your car loan. Sometimes you can call that credit lender, whether it's Bank of America, Wells Fargo, TD Bank, Exeter, or whatever, and say, "Hey, I can't pay this month. Is there any way we can take this month and put it towards the end of my calendar?" So it's 72 months. So now ultimately it's 73-month loan because you had a 1 month free. That allows you to catch up so you won't have that late payment.
So learning how to negotiate, and I think knowing that, what would you say the percentages? I mean, we can basically, as consumers, negotiate with.
Oh, absolutely.
80, 90, if not more, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure if there's any companies that are not willing to negotiate, but for the most part, unless it's a sort of consecutive thing or constant thing that you're doing, you can negotiate everything.
Yeah, you can negotiate. Right? I mean, it's all about, to me, with the credit report, it just shows your ability to communicate. Because if I was to look at your credit report and see that your score is in the 400s, I would just think that you're a bad communicator. Because the only way for your score to be in the 400 is for you not to check your mailbox to see that you had any mail. You haven't checked your email. You haven't checked your voicemail for any phone calls that they've made. And you're not answering the phone to all the collectors or your current debts that you have and paying those. So if you're in the 400s, there's a high likelihood that you're not communicating well and you're just avoiding the call, which, I mean, I did that when I was young. So I see a bill collector, ooh, I don't have the money. So we just taught to have to answer the call. I mean, I've taught that as a young kid when I see my parents, don't answer that phone. It's why not? But you basically are taught not to communicate when they're telling you don't answer the phone.
Pick up the phone responsibility in a sense too, right?
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, you've made that spend. You've spent that money. Yeah. So and again, going back to what I said in the beginning, I think for companies, right? Like if somebody's not responsible with their credit, with communicating, with answering those important questions or calls, then how are you going to run their business? What are you going to do with the money that they're going to give you, right? How are you going to carry that in a responsible way?
And whether it's big or small, it's the same. If you have a big debt, it shows you can't be trusted with a lot of money.
Right.
If you have a little bit of debt, like a $76, $80 collection, they look at you like, wow. So you're making $5,000 a month and you haven't taken care of it.
Right.
What kind of person are you?
True. That's true. So now, what about the people that's coming from a minority and in a smaller sort of slow or very low resource family? My dad, for example, has had a business for 30 years, right? And he was always against credit cards.
Yeah.
If you don't, the way he spoke to us was, if you don't have it, don't spend it, right? But later on, I've also learned to utilize the credit card companies to build your credit. So what would you say to somebody, again, we're speaking to people that are mostly in a cash industry driven business. What would you say, like, are there any things that you can share for them to utilize the credit card companies to build their credit?
So there's a few cards out there that are like secured credit cards. So if you just have cash business and you don't trust the credit card companies, that's all fine and dandy. But take $300 to $500. Go and set you up 3 secured credit cards. They have a secured card at Wells Fargo, Navy Federal, a bunch of other banks. I believe Chase has a secured card, if I'm not mistaken. So you can go and get these secured credit cards. Capital One has one. And get these secured credit cards. Take them. If you don't want to use them, put them in a Ziploc bag, put some water in it, throw it in the freezer. That gives you enough time for it to thaw out for you to decide, do I really want to use this? And put that in the freezer and let it build up. If you don't have a balance, then you don't owe a payment. And a lot of times they'll only have maybe an annual fee, which is why I like secured cards. I don't like the cards where you get for the credit one and all those banks because they have an annual fee. Right. And see a lot of clients that don't use the card. You have a $70 annual fee the next year, and because you didn't pay that, you get a late payment. If you go do a secured card, you don't have a balance, you don't have a fee. And a lot of us are taught if you're not using the card, then you're basically not getting those points or whatever the case may be. But for a person that's fearful of using that card and getting into debt, those okay payments for 6 to 12 months are far better than not having one.
Wow.
So because you have those cards for just 6 months, those cards is going to take you to a 780 credit score. You never spend a dime.
Wow. That's insane.
And then
that's awesome.
you can take that money and get your money back. It's just like savings. They give you your money right back.
Yeah.
So it's no loss. And now you're getting better interest rates on your house. Because my dad said the same thing, but it didn't make sense because it's like you're telling me not to get a credit card, but you're telling me to buy a house. So basically, if I buy a house without any credit, now I'm stuck with a 5% interest rate where I'm paying almost 4 or 5 times more for my house versus me getting 3 simple secured credit cards, keeping them for 6 months, getting a 3% interest rate, and have a very much lower payment, something I can afford. But I would say it's very typical of people that have the worst credit. A lot of mortgage people will say all you need is a 580 to get a mortgage. Those people that have a 580 actually go into foreclosure more because their payment's a lot higher than the person that have the 640. If they just would have had 2 or 3 secured credit cards, they would have a lower payment.
So what are some of the other habits or things that you can share for these guys to build their credit in a cash-driven industry?
So I would say download Credit Karma. A lot of people have a stigma. Stigma against Credit Karma. Credit Karma, what I love about it alerts you every time something happens that's right. Every time something happens that's wrong. I get the alert on my phone. They update you every single week. So if something negative was to show up, it will let you know. If you went up a certain amount of scores, it will let you know. So it lets you be more accountable and for free. So that way you don't have to pay for it. And I would just say I check mine every week. So I know that my report updates on Sunday. So every Sunday when I wake up, I'm looking at my report and I'm just scrolling through to make sure everything looks the same. Everything's paid on time. It's not reporting. It clearly shows your balances as far as your utilization. So it lets you know if you're at 70%, 30%. So, to keep an eye on that. And in inquiries, try not to let anybody run your credit. You don't say we're not going to run your credit, especially the killers are when you go try to apply for a car, they run your credit 30 or 40 times. So now when you run your credit 30 or 40 times, now you can't get approved for that credit card or something that you really need, like a big payday loan or a loan, because you have too many inquiries, and that makes you look desperate, like you're out shopping for money.
Right.
And the car dealers, they know this, but at the end of the day, they're trying to get paid too. They're shopping you for the best rate, and they're pushing your credit as many times as possible.
How can you avoid that? I mean, do you just not share your information with them?
So the best thing to do, especially if you have cash, find you a local credit union. There's out here, there's America's First Credit Union, Mountain America Credit Union is an extra credit union, and go drop cash into their account. Set up an account, keep dropping in cash. Because they're more of a relationship type of banks, not like a traditional bank like Bank of America that have shareholders. They tend to lend out a lot more easily to cash people than Bank of America because they want paycheck stubs. So if you're going to buy a car, five to 10,000, it makes more sense to go to Mountain America, get a check for 10,000. They're only going to run your credit one time. Then you go to the dealership, buy the car for 10,000, and then even if you have the cash, wait 2 or 3 months and then pay that $10,000 off.
Nice.
Now you have a paid off car on your credit. This is going to shoot your score up even more.
Yeah, no, for sure. So would you recommend that for, again, industry professionals in a cash driven industry, like you said, the Bank of America, the Wells Fargo, that doesn't necessarily do much for them, a credit union?
Yeah, we're all used to Bank of America's on every corner. So that's what the bank we want. That's all the optics. But if you're in a cash driven business, you want to have your money into a credit union. Because the credit union is going to help you out a whole lot more, because they're basically going to say, okay, how much you make? Let me see your deposits. So as long as you're putting money into the bank, you can put the money into the bank and take it right back out.
Right.
So if you put $3 or $4 grand in on Monday, you can take it out on Wednesday. And now they see that you're constantly putting in money. Now they're going to be like, okay, well, how much do you need? And they're going to print that check out right then and there. You take it to the car dealership that you're trying to go to. And a lot of times you can negotiate a better deal because you're paying cash.
True, because you're paying cash.
You're paying cash. Like, you know what? This car is 10,000, I'll give you 8 right now. And the bank gave you that extra $2 grand. You can use that for your, say, I want you to wrap it in the registration. Right. So you can use it all together. So that way you're not coming out of pocket.
That's awesome. When I was, my first car, I think it was like 3,700, right? That it was a 90 something, Eclipse Turbo. Yeah. So my dad took me to the car dealership, and he was like, I got 1,500 cash. Do you guys want it? Obviously it was used, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're at 3,700. He's like, all right, cool. So we're walking away, and literally as we get to the door, they're like, all right, fine, we'll give it to you. So again, I mean, cash does, sort of have a bigger say, if you will, than credit, but you got to utilize it accordingly. I think something that you touched on just now is, for when these guys get their check, or I'm sorry, their tips, right? Because they're getting tips every day. I think for them to get into a habit of, even like you said, even if they're going to take it out, 2 days, 3 days later, for them to constantly just be putting in their tips into, or depositing, into their account. Yep. Right? Something as simple as that.
Yeah. So I think a lot of cash, they get scared, like, oh, I don't want to put that in there because I have to file taxes on it. Not necessarily, as long as you don't go over that certain amount of threshold, you're not putting, if you put $300, $400, $500 in there every other day, that's not something that's going to cause a red flag. It's taxable. You know what I'm saying? So just put in there. But if you're going to drop 15,000, then absolutely, that's going to throw up something like, sure. So just, if you're going to do that, you got 15,000, just spread that out $1,000 for like a month, and just put $1,000 every other day.
Yeah, and again, I think it doesn't have to be a weekly thing. Maybe every 2 weeks, right? Like, as long as you're able to show, that money's being deposited and you take it out.
Well, the bank, they're looking at it from a standpoint of, how can you show us that you can make this payment? So even if you have the cash, you don't want to use your cash and not get any benefit for me. That's my thing. So if your payment on that's going to be $300, are you even dropping $300 in the account? So if you're not putting that much money in the account, then they're typically not going to lend out because they feel that you don't have the money to pay it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other habits that they can do, or how to avoid, obviously you shared a little bit already. We talked about how to build credit in a cash-driven industry. Any other habits that you want to share with these guys?
The best habit that I would say is just always make sure they're communicating and calling with the bank, because people forget all the time. They're always thinking that, well, I called them and I told them, I could pay it on this date.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure you communicate. Look, I don't want to have a late payment on my credit report. So what's the final date that I have to pay? So that way, because you can't reverse a late payment. You can reverse. There's two different types of lates. Mm-hmm. So there's after you're 30 days late, they report that to the credit bureau. But if your bill is due on the 5th and you don't pay it to the 20th, you just have a late payment with the credit issuer. You don't have a late payment with it.
Interesting.
They're paying on your credit. So a lot of the times they get those two things confused, and they're just like, yeah, I'm currently late right now. It's like, well, if it's not 30 days late, it doesn't really affect you. You'll get a late fee with the bank, but it won't affect your actual credit report.
And again, in the longevity of your credit score, which one's best, right?
Yeah.
What about negotiating now? If some of these guys have made some bad choices or haven't communicated, negotiating with the lender before you get it goes to the credit score or to the credit agency. I'm sorry. Any sort of hacks? Because I know that again, cash, if you have it, they will lower the total by half, or if not whatever.
So you're basically talking about if they actually owe the money and took a charge.
Correct.
Yeah. So with those, you just want to make sure, for one, you make sure it's within statute of limitations. So anytime you receive something in the mail, open up the mail, open up the letter, and look to see if anything says you cannot be sued for this. You technically can throw that up and use that as firewood starter, because that basically is saying they're past statute of limitations, meaning we can no longer sue you for this debt. This debt is too old, but we like you for you to be responsible and pay it. You don't owe that money. But for any debts that you actually have that were within the statute of limitations, you can look that up and go to Google, type in statute of limitations for debt, find your state, and it'll tell you what the statute of limitations for everything, oral contract, written contract, and promissory notes and things of that nature.
Okay.
So once you find that out, then you can negotiate.
Right.
Yes, so many of us get on the phone because we don't have any leverage. So they'll say, oh, we owe $3,000. But because you didn't read the actual paper, you see that they can't sue you. So look, this is actually time barred. It's basically, you can't sue me anyways. So just to have face, I can give you $100.
Right.
And you basically you won't sell this to anybody else, because the last thing you want is to not pay them and then they sell it to another company and put it on your credit report, damaging your credit again, because one collection could drop you almost 100 points.
Wow.
And
the more they sell it, the more hits that your credit's taking, right?
And hits your credit's taken. So you just want to kind of try to negotiate those. And the more information you have on them, the better it is. Ask them, are you even legally allowed to collect in the state? Most of my clients, I tell them, if anybody does call you to try to collect, just let them know that you always want something in writing.
Yeah,
just talking
100%.
on the phone. Because, get over the phone, the conversations, even though say it's recorded, he said this, she said that. I say, just send me everything in writing. I'm going to look at it and I'll call you back.
Yeah. I think that avoids scams too. There's been a lot of times where I get a call like, oh, you owe this much, but we'll take $50. Just give me your information. Like, no. Yeah. Send it to my home address if you have it. Obviously, you should. Yeah. Right, and then I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, they always ask me, "Is this Charles? Can you verify the last 4 of your social?" I cannot.
Right.
Whatever you have, send it to me in writing.
Yeah.
They'll ask me, "Can you verify the address? Whatever address you have on file, because obviously you have my cell phone number. You should have my address. Send that to me in writing, and then we can take care from there."
That's another big one too, because if you share information where you shouldn't, I've heard of people's lives being ruined because of a credit scam.
So identity theft is the largest scam there is out there. A lot of times they don't have to break into your house anymore to get things. They can actually just call you because you're in a frantic, or my credit be messed up. Is this Susan? And what's your current address? And you tell them. Now they have your name and your address. Right. So the only thing they really need after that is typically your date of birth, which they can Google that, in the last 4 of your social. They say verify the last 4 of your social. There's a lot of sites they can go to and generate a credit report just like that. So now they have all your information. They can call Chase and say, "Hey, I'm Susan. I moved. Can you please send me my new credit card over to this address?" and now they have your credit card, and you're stuck frantic around trying to fix all this.
Right.
Your credit score goes from 800 to 600. Or if you know, a lot of people say, I don't have bad credit, nobody would steal my credit. Yeah, actually they would, because they can still get a lot of things like cell phones, payday loans. They can still get cars, even though the interest rate's bad, because they just want a joyride.
Right. Yeah,
They're
no,
not
for
planning
sure.
on paying the payment. We have a sponsorship with Dodge, and somebody just came in there and used somebody else's ID with their face on it and drove off with the car.
Wow.
You know. And,
you're talking like, you know, for a test ride?
Well, a lot of out in Vegas, they don't actually sell the deal right then and there. The deal gets sold about 3 days later.
Oh, interesting.
So they give you the car almost like, hey, take this, so we know the deal is done. And so they hopped in the car and took off, and then basically they're going to have to potentially, you know, file a police report. So they want to put that car on that lady's credit, who never came in the first place.
That is insane.
And all they came in there was with her social, her address, and all that stuff. It was crazy how easy it is now to get things in other people's names.
Last thing, one year touch on, you know, once, you know, if these guys getting into a bad place, you know, obviously you offer services, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the services that you offer, and, you know, what would you suggest to them, you know, kind of like the lawyer of like, you know, don't, you know, play the fifth sort of thing. Like, what are some of the things that they can do before they come to somebody like yourself?
So like I said, go to Credit Karma, look and see how bad it is. Because a lot of people that we speak with, they've never even looked at their credit report. They've been denied that they've had bad credit. And so they just really think that their credit's bad. But the score doesn't really dictate how bad your credit is. Somebody can have a 600 credit score with a bunch of charge-offs, like a bunch of debt that they hadn't paid, and they have a 600 credit score because those charge-offs are owed. But a person that has new items might have a 400 credit score. But both of those credits are both just equally as bad.
Right.
So they think, I have a 600, I don't need credit repair.
Right.
It's not to say you don't need the credit repair. The credit repair gets a bad stigma as it's repairing. We're basically just holding them accountable for the job that they're supposed to do. They're supposed to make sure everything is accurate based on the Fair Credit Reporting Act on your credit report. So if there is a medical bill that's on your credit report, they can't really disclose the doctor that you went to, because a potential employer can look and say, they have a prosthetic limb.
Gotcha.
Or they went to a cancer doctor. We don't want to hire them. So they take, based on the HIPAA laws, they can't put that on there. So with that being on there, that's part of the credit repair, because it's an inaccuracy. Same way with a bankruptcy. Nobody files bankruptcy on $0. But if everybody looks at their credit report and they had a bankruptcy, it's going to say liability is $0, which is incorrect.
Wow.
You know, so they basically just having us hold them accountable for things that, you know, most of the consumers don't research themselves and don't know.
100%.
Credit Karma gives you the option to dispute, which I would never dispute with them, because it's always going to say, this is not mine. The balance is incorrect.
Right.
This account is old. They're not going to say the balance on a bankruptcy should never be $0. You need to contact basically the county and see, you know, how much was attached to my bankruptcy. If you can't figure that stuff out, then that needs to come off, because basically you're reporting it incorrectly. How bad do I look by having a bankruptcy on $0?
Right. And we're protected through the federal act, right?
Fair Credit Reporting Act.
Awesome. So, and where can they find you if they ever need your service?
Credit Chef everywhere. My website's thecreditchef.com. I am on Instagram at The Credit Chef.
Nice.
So,
we'll tag you on there.
Yeah, tag me on that. Facebook, The Credit Chef. You know, Twitter, I think is the only one we had to add the asterisk at the bottom because somebody had it from years ago. I'm trying to contact them.
When that happens.
Yeah, I'm trying to contact them to buy it. So if anybody knows where that guy is, I'm paying. But
seriously.
He won't respond. But pretty much at The Credit Chef everywhere. You can go to my website. All of the tips and tricks I talked about, they're on there. The secured credit cards are there. How to sign up, and the things that we do. We just go over with your credit report with you, and we just look at the bad marks and just basically decide whether or not it's something that you need for us to do or something that we can direct you to do.
Right.
Because sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, you have this medical collection. They passed a bill that once a medical collection is paid, it automatically is removed off your credit report. So you don't need to sign up for credit repair. But someone like Lexington Law will take your money. Oh,
yeah, of course.
Sign you up, dispute it, get it off, and be like, oh, yeah, we did that. when you could have just
Yeah, you
paid the
could've done it
medical
yourself.
collection that's 5 years old. It's 5 years old. To give them $50, that's off your credit.
Right.
Everybody today, I have a gentleman. I help a lot of homeless guys. I say, hey, let me check out your credit. And go on there, it's like $8 medical bill. He's in the 600s for my $8 medical bill. So you can't really look at the score and determine how bad your credit is because you literally have an $8 medical bill.
That's insane.
We paid that thing. He'll probably be in the 700s probably in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, bottom line is do your research.
Mhm.
I think that, just like anything else, just like in any other side of business, again, thinking of corporate entrepreneurs, the podcast, you should treat yourself as a business,
Mhm.
right? Do your research, have leverage. The more leverage you have, the better.
Yeah.
And just try to create those good habits that are going to show, you're already making the money, right?
Yeah.
You're already working hard, getting those tips. So just make sure that you're able to report that, right, in a credit report and with your bank to then get a better loan rate and continue to make more money,
Yeah.
right, rather than giving it to these
and
guys.
One of the magical tips I'll give you one of the tips I give to my paying clients.
Mm.
When you're in a cash business or any type of business where you're stressed out about, what I'm going to do about my car payment, because you never know, especially in the bartender, you may have slow weeks.
Yeah, of course.
And you have other bills to pay. But if you set up that relationship with those credit unions, you can go to them and say, hey, you know what? My bills for 12 months is $12,000. So I need a loan for 12 grand because you're constantly putting money in there. You take that $12,000 loan, they're going to put that money into your account. And then you have that in the account where you can set everything up on auto pay. So it's automatically paid. So now your check is going in there. And then when you get your check, you just throw chunks at that loan.
Mm-hmm.
And when you pay that off, now you have credit for the same things that you're not getting credit for.
Correct. Yeah, for the same things that you're already.
You're not getting credit for your
paying.
rent. You're not getting credit for your insurance, your power bill, your water bill, your cell phone bill. But if you go get a loan from a bank and pay all that stuff off, you now have got credit for things you don't get credit for. And you now won't have bad credit like most of the consumers in there because they're basically paying things that don't even report on their credit on time.
Right.
And the things that do not, they don't have the money for it because they say, well, I paid the light. My light bill was $1,500. Well, it's only $1,500 because you were late.
Right.
But if you pay that on time,
I love that.
You pay it. You can actually negotiate with them and say, hey, I want to be on equal payments. It's a lot of things that you can do with other companies that we just don't know because we're always behind.
Correct. Yeah. And I think it's a little bit of, I don't know, there's this like stipulation with cash and credit and all these things that we're almost afraid to like talk about these things and, talk about how if we're, low on payments or whatever it is, right? If it's low at work, nobody likes to talk about them needing, that 30 days or 15 days sort of late payment. So it's, I don't think it should be a taboo. It's how do you learn? How do you, know what leverage you have, and how do you utilize it to work for you?
Yeah, tell everybody that goes and buy a car. I'm just asking them, I say, what's your interest rate? And they're like, I don't know. I said, well, okay, let's do the math.
Right.
When they put that paperwork in front of you, they say you're going to have $700 payment for 75 months. Mm-hmm. We got to be adults and know that we have cell phones now. Pull your cell phone out. Pull up the calculator, multiply 700 times 75, and that's how much you're paying for that car.
Yeah.
If that car is only $20,000 and you're paying $40,000 for the car, you need to run the other way because basically that's a debt that you can never get out of.
Right.
Because that car doesn't have that value.
Right.
So
I think especially again, a lot of companies tend to do that sort of those tricks where that monthly payment seems very low, right? Mm-hmm. But it's through the amount of time that you're paying that, at the end of the day, you're buying 3 cars.
You're buying 3 cars because you look at it, it's giving me 75 months, but they're charging you interest per day. Right. And that interest per day can range anywhere from $28 on the low end to almost $30 or $40 per day. So you times that per day times 75 months. And that's how much you paid for the car just because you technically didn't have the money to buy that car outright. So that's why, especially at this time of the year, because it's tax season. That's why everybody.
They're going to get you.
You do not want to go to the dealership without checking your credit first. Wait that month, get your credit fixed, pay down the debts that you owe, get that credit up first, and then go back to the dealership. Right. Because right now they're shooting fish in a barrel. They're not trying to give you a deal anyways. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows they're buying cars.
Right.
But right after the tax season slows down, April, May, they're not They're not selling that many cars.
Yeah, they need a
So
little bit
go
more
ahead
help.
and fix your credit first, then come back in there, get a better interest rate. It could be a difference of 24% all the way down to 3 to 5%.